All right, guys, OV Athletics STREAMcast here. We're coming to you guys a little bit early today. You know, us three are all teachers. We had a little bit of a snow day. We decided to hit the ground running.
Some of us are still at lunch.
Yeah, some of us are still at lunch. You know, Jeff gave you such a hard time, you know, for showing up or not showing up when you were at the beach.
Yeah.
But then, you know,
Mr.
Tardy, you know, decides to wait for lunch. That, you know, probably they're growing it, waiting for him.
The eggs hatched.
Yeah, it's gonna be a long time till he gets here. We have no idea when he gets here. If he gets here, he gets here. But OV Athletics STREAMcast brought to you by OV Nutrition.
Where we're just better.
Oh, yeah, we're just better. Yeah, we got to get the Jeff line in. We got to get his tagline in. But OV Nutrition, I'm just going to give a quick rundown of our sponsors. Back with us, See For Yourself, Lori Grizel Insurance. And we'll give you guys more longer plugs on those in a little bit.
And Swan Sports.
And Swan Sports Shop, yep. So our normal sponsors, it's great to have our team with us as we move forward. Since we're mixing it up a little bit, Tom, I thought what we'd do is we'd sort of go with our little mixture sort of potpourri segment here. You know, we've got a little bit of time early here, so Jeff and I can get into the rundowns whenever he gets here. But I figured this would be a great place to start. And just sort of get into everything. So the first part of our potpourri segment is we have Ted Arnold. If I said that wrong, please let me know.
I'm sure they will.
But he was named Weirton Madonna's head coach.
And he's been around a while. He was at Oak Glen for a while, and there's some stats on there. I know he's been in Hancock County for a while doing football for a considerable amount of time. So I think that's a good hire for them.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things. Weirton Madonna is always one of those teams that, you know, has a little bit of a soft spot for me, you know, coaching at the Catholic school for a while at Bishop. You know, there was always that sort of intense but friendly rivalry between Weirton Madonna and Bishop Donahue. So, again, they sort of have a soft spot for Weirton Madonna.
They've shown up time and time again through the years. I mean, every once in a while you'll see them make a good run.
Yeah, but so we have here that Arnold was 6 years. He was at Oak Glen's head coach. Okay. And he had a 2022 undefeated season that potentially could have gone on a state tournament run. But that season, as we all know, in 2020, you know, in case nobody remembers that year, it was cut short with COVID. So
Everybody remembers that year.
That season was cut off tragically. I know that, you know, basketball was cut off early that year, and then I believe that even interrupted baseball and softball that year for quite a while too.
I coached lacrosse at Wheeling Park that year. We got one game in. And I tell you, that team I had was probably the best team I've ever coached in any sport because they were just phenomenal. And we like to think it was going to be our year too. That first game, we ended up beating a team like 16-0 or whatever. And I was pulling guys 5 minutes into the game.
Yeah, I know that's one of
it was 5-0, like.
I know that's one of the things that, you know, we talk about a lot is, you know, how COVID affected that season. That might even be something that we might do as a future, like, article or maybe even STREAMcast episode of like, hey, let's look at the seasons of teams around the valley that were interrupted that year and see maybe what could have been.
And not just that, I think we're finally getting to the point where our numbers are starting to come back, because even after COVID was over and we kind of got to get on the pitch, the field or the ice or whatever it is that we were getting on, numbers were down across the board in a lot of sports.
Right.
So like when I coached football down at Bridge Street and Wheeling Middle and a couple other places, and then lacrosse at Park, we came back and we took a significant dip in the amount of players that we had on the field. I don't know if people were still nervous about it. They didn't know if the season was going to get in. There was something there. And, you know, being teachers, it set students back and everything. So it really disrupted a lot of lives. And I think we're finally getting to the point that we're past that, and I'm so glad, because sports is something that just is so important in life.
Well, we've talked about it before. Like, sports is that great unifier, and it's one of those things that can bring people together and can let you sort of, you know, everybody have a common ground or something that they can talk about. And that's what we saw with sports that kind of was interrupted there during those COVID years. And like, how weird did those hockey games feel when they were in the bubble in Canada, and it was like, you know, they couldn't leave, there were no fans, they tried the artificial stuff. I mean, you and I are huge hockey guys. But that was so weird to me, just hearing like dead silence. I was like, it was like being at a Blue Jackets game.
Absolutely. And I think that was a nice lead-in on your department as far as hockey goes, or are we getting to robotics
we can do either one. But so basically, we thought we'd do a little bit of rundown of where OV Athletics was this weekend.
Everywhere. That's the short answer.
Yeah,
everywhere.
Literally everywhere. I was at the field house at John Marshall. Again, it's kind of odd being in these awesome gyms, but not for a traditional basketball arena or even like. But I was at the field house on Saturday. I was there for 11 hours. I got there at 7 a.m. After being there 11 hours the day before, helping set up, as John Marshall was the host to the...
Well, you get a lot of help setting up, don't you?
Yeah, we had a lot of help from Sherrard parents and, you know, our fellow coaches at Sherrard.
That's nice.
Nice. it kind of turned into the charade tournament. But Coach Sims,
go Rams.
But Coach Sims from John Marshall was a huge help. His wife was a huge help, and some of his parents and students came down to help as well. Very so it kind of turned into a charade / John Marshall tournament. But yeah, we were there at 8 a.m. on Friday to set up. We were there until 7 p.m. Setting up on Friday, and then flipped around the next morning. And I know Tom put a picture up of, hey, that's our guy Zach on the mic. I was emceeing the event. My wife was coordinating a bunch of judges. Mr. Gatz was like running around filling in. I mean, it was a really great event and wouldn't have been possible without all of our parent volunteers and everything sort of jumping in. And that's one of the things that we talk about a lot in sports, and it happened here too, where the community really jumped in and was helpful. I mean, we had former retired assistant superintendent Woody Yoder came down to help out. And there were so many people that were in the community that just came down to help out with this tournament. It was really awesome.
Well, I swiped that picture off of a Sherrard parent.
Yeah.
Because I was busy that day as well, being in hockey. We'll get to it in a minute.
I haven't had a chance to write an article up about it yet, just because, it's been crazy. But it was a fantastic tournament. There were 28 teams that were there. We had representatives from every middle school in Ohio County and Marshall County, with the exception of one in Ohio County.
Okay.
And then we had both John Marshall, Wheeling Park, and Cameron High School were represented. And then North Marion came in to actually enter the tournament as well, which they just hosted one last weekend. So they're really trying to get their reps in and get ready for states.
And a lot of stuff is going to transition to this and the esports. A little preview. We have an article coming up on Bethany College. They just added an esports program. We'll talk about that in the very near future. Look for an article on OV Athletics with that.
It's one of those things that's really exciting. I know WVSSAC is looking at what they can do with the robotics competitions and things as well. But I sort of have given this before, where there's a little bit of a rundown. Every year in the robotics competitions, the competition that they're doing changes. This year's called Spin Up, which, without going too deep into the rules and overwhelming everybody, it's essentially disc golf.
Okay.
And there's a period where students have to program a robot to go through an automated program to try to score points. And then there's a driver-controlled part where the students actually control the robots with a remote controller. It actually looks like a video game controller. But the kids spend a ton of time, our kids in particular at Sherrard, we have a robotics class, which is an elective that they can take. And then we have practices after school. We had one, we just finished hosting our tournament. We had a robotics practice after school yesterday. We were going to have one today until the snow day happened. I mean, these kids are putting in 4 to 5 days a week worth of practice, and they're taking robots home with them and building them. I talked to Dr. Shepard, who's the head coach of Wheeling Park's robotics team. He said he has students that when school's over there at 2:30, they come straight to his room, and he has to run them out of the building by 6:30 because those kids still want to be there and want to be working.
And let's face it, these kids that are in these competitions right now, when they graduate, they're going to be making more money than us, because the real world applications for these things is off the charts.
It's
you talk about medicine, military, I'm sure a bunch of different things. Just manufacturing, I mean, it's across the board. You have no idea. They might be flipping our burgers at McDonald's one day.
Well, and engineering,
or a fast food restaurant.
And just the engineering aspect of it too. I mean, there is so much involved. My favorite thing about it is, as coaches for this, we kind of have to be hands off. There's part of me that we're traditional athletics coaches.
Right.
So, we want to be sitting on the sidelines. We want to be yelling, hey, you could do this. Hey, you could do this. Coach them up. But it's kind of more like a golf coach, where you're a little bit more observant. You're not really as actively involved in the coaching, which is kind of interesting. But it's all student-based. These kids are responsible for their code. They're responsible for building their robots. They're responsible for upkeeping an engineering notebook that gets scored by judges as well. And the criteria is really intense. My wife was our head referee for this tournament. She had to do an hour or 2 online class to be certified to even do that, which was kind of cool. But the way that it works is there's qualifying rounds. We had 54 qualifying matches where teams are set up in alliances of 2 versus 2. And during those 54 matches, you get seeded based on what your record was, how many points you scored autonomous, driver controlled, etc., or tiebreakers. And then after that, there's this alliance period that's kind of crazy, where the number 1 seed gets to pick somebody else to be in an alliance with them. It can be anybody beneath them.
Okay.
And a team has a right of first refusal. But if they refuse, they can't be picked again. So if the number 1 seed tries to pick the 10th seed,
right,
and they say no, they have to then wait until their turn comes up to pick somebody to be in an alliance. So it kind of behooves you. There's a little bit of strategy that can come in there. In particular, one of our teams ranked like 3rd or 4th. We had them pick one of the teams from Wheeling Park High School, and they accepted, which we were kind of surprised. We're like, hey, we'll give them a shot here. If they pick us, great, we'll work really well with that robot. But if they don't, there was a little bit of that gamesmanship there of, they then can't be picked until they come up. So that was kind of interesting. And then after that, it goes into...
So do you get to pick somebody else, like if they would refuse?
Yeah, so if they refuse, you get to pick again, and basically it continues until somebody gets picked, or somebody does or does not get picked. And
are there grudges?
There are some grudges. There are some grudges that appear to pick up. Like there are some teams that just straight up, like before this happens, there's like a chance for the people that are representing each team to sort of mingle and interact with each other. And there are some people that are like, we absolutely will turn you down if you pick us, so don't pick us. It's a little bit more friendly than that. Like, for example, one Wheeling Park team was like, hey, don't pick us because our intake's broken. Like, you don't want to pick us. But then their intake was somehow fixed by the finals miraculously. I'm not saying there was gamesmanship there. I think it was just they were tinkering in between matches and managed to fix it. But it's really kind of cool. And then after that comes the elimination rounds, where those teams go head-to-head with their chosen alliances. And then, how
long are rounds?
Each round is 1 minute and 45, or 2 minutes total.
So you can get a lot of stuff in.
You can get a lot of stuff in, yeah. We were a little bit behind schedule when we started. By the time we got to the elimination matches, we were like 15 minutes ahead of schedule, which huge shout out to Fairmont State staff, who was really instrumental in helping us sort of drive this.
We spoke off camera. You mentioned how incredible those people
They were absolutely astounding. They have the people from the school, and then they have some student volunteers that were part of it as well. It was really, really, really cool. But enough about the mechanics of it. There in the final round, there was a little bit of controversy that happened. It was 2 teams from Wheeling Park High School, Iron Patriots Mark 1 and I believe Mark 3. I'd have to double check the actual rundown of it to be sure. And then 2 teams from Bridge Street Middle, Steel Devils 1 and 3, I believe. And basically what happened is
the names.
Yeah, they're awesome names. Some of the ones from Sherrard are a little bit more silly, but
how about Triadelphia's?
Triadelphia has some cool ones. They have some cool ones.
Rosie's Raiders
is pretty cool. Yeah. But so what happened in the final match was there's a part of the period where you can sort of expand your robot, and Bridge Street deployed theirs a little early, and when that happens, you have to go to a neutral square, and you're not allowed to score any points until the end game expansion happens. Well, what happened is during that end game expansion, they went and scored a roller, which is not allowed because you're not allowed to score any points after that point. And so it caused a 20-point swing.
Oh.
So it allowed Bridge Street to go up point-wise, but because they scored when they weren't supposed to be doing anything, they ended up getting disqualified in the finals match. So it's kind of tough because it looked like on the scoreboard that they should have beat Wheeling Park, but there was a 20-point swing that could have happened. But that team is really, really, really good. They're going to be really strong contenders at the middle school tournaments that's coming up, because it's kind of crazy to think about that middle schoolers and high schoolers are competing against each other in these, and some of the middle schoolers are actually holding their weight. Like,
I was just thinking that.
The Bridge Street teams are always tough. The Triadelphia teams are tough. I mean, I'm biased, but I think our Sherrard teams are always tough. But so basically what happened was Park ended up winning, but their teams ended up winning the tournament again. I think of the last several in the Valley, those Wheeling Park teams have either won or been in the finals. I think 5 of the last 6.
Well, great job to the middle school programs, because on an athletic field, you think of the physical differences between a middle school kid and a high school kid. There's a whole nother level of cognitive ability between a middle school kid and a high school kid.
Absolutely.
The brain is just developed a little bit more, or is it more being a little bit more creative, more free thinking at middle school level?
When you look at the middle school robots, they all look really different. So I think there's a little bit wide variety of that. The high school ones kind of, not necessarily all mimicked each other, but they all kind of had similar ideas and ran with that. And they've probably been through 7 or 8 prototypes. I feel like the middle schools don't go through as many prototyping because, again, I don't think they're as developed with the engineering design process. But I think sometimes they have a little bit more out-of-the-box designs. Like, for example, one of our robots has, like, little chains that they drop down and they leave these little trails during this expansion. It literally can't score discs. Like, it's a competition where you score points by throwing discs in, and all it can do is bulldoze discs and then basically guard rollers, which it's kind of interesting how that works out. But
I look forward to catching them.
Yeah, so the tournament champions were Iron Patriots Mark 1 and Mark 4. And then excellence awards were given out for basically teams that exemplified, the engineering design process. They had a great notebook. They conducted themselves well during the tournament and were just good sports in general. North Marion Robotics won the high school one. That team's extremely nice people. I had a chance to talk to all of the members of their team as I was
least creative name of the bunch, though.
Yeah, North Marion Robotics, and then the team from Sherrard Middle School, the Cocoa Puff Gang, who I absolutely refuse to call the Cocoa Puff Gang.
You just did.
I call them the Cocoa Puff Consortium at practice because I think consortium sounds more futuristic. I was not consulted when they made their team names, though. So
surprising.
I kind of ran with that.
They named it after a cereal, and you didn't have anything to do with it.
I know, it's shocking, right? And then the Design Award, which was for an innovative design of a robot or a mechanism on their robot, that went to the Robo Raiders from Triadelphia Middle School, who also have I've been told have done phenomenally in the Judges Award a lot too, because they have a very outstanding engineering notebook.
A little bit of little shout out to RoboCop. Is that what they were on that one, or just Robo in general?
I just think robots like Robo Raiders, but it's pretty awesome. Coach Bishop, who is their coach, made like custom T-shirts for all of them too, so they're kind of matched up when they're going. It's kind of cool. Each team has different ones. She said it was kind of a second.
Well, you're going to need uniforms.
There was a secondary.
You need uniforms.
She said there was a secondary purpose behind it too, because then she can look and see the different colors of T-shirts and know where all her teams are too at tournaments. So a little bit of shrewd shout out there to Coach Bishop, and then the Robot Skills Champion was Steel Devils 3, and then the Judges Award went to the Rosie's Raiders. Who
now, is that an all-girls team?
It is an all-girls team.
Rosie the Riveter?
They do Rosie the Riveter. They wear the bandanas and the yellow T-shirts and the whole thing. Yeah, it's really, really cool.
I gotta get to one of these.
Yeah, it's really, really cool. And they're really sweet young ladies that are all members of that team. It's really, really cool.
My niece goes to Triadelphia. It'd be nice if she'd have done something.
It's really cool. They do a great job, and Ohio County on one of their Facebook posts called them fan favorites, and honestly, they really are.
I haven't even seen them. They're my favorite.
Yeah, honestly, they're
over the Cocoa Puff Consortium.
Consortium. There you go.
Is that what it is?
Consortium. That's what I call them, but they went with another name there. But yeah, so it was a lot of fun. It was a really cool tournament. It was a lot of fun, and then a huge shout out again. To my fellow coaches and our volunteers that were really, really helpful. I mean, tons of parents jumped in. I mean, we had 2 parents who had never scored a robotics match before jump in, and they were judging the finals match that had this crazy
and just like everything,
crazy DQ.
It means a lot when you get people to help you.
I mean, people from the board office jumping in. I mean, teachers that are new to our building coming and jumping in. I mean, it's so cool to see the community sort of rally together. And that's what I think was the coolest about this, is that it's a very unique community that's surrounding our robotics competition. And so we'll sort of jump, we'll go up the river a little bit. You spent a lot of time at West Banco Arena this weekend, right?
A lot of time. 2 games on Friday night, 6 games on Saturday. And I only did 2 games on Friday. There was a total of 4, but I only picked up 2 of them. Exciting weekend. Very exciting weekend of hockey. There was a middle school state championship, high school state championship. There's 3 exhibition games where we had the U8 Nailers play the U10 Junior Birds. It was the first ever game for the Junior Birds, and that's an all-girls team. What happened is the girls team that they had, they all aged out, so they all kind of moved on, and they have to rebuild and start from scratch, and this is a brand new program. It's the first time that they took the ice, and the U8 Nailers usually only play like a third of the ice, so they mark the ice off in sections, thirds, and they go side to side, and it's usually 3-on-3 action. So this was the first time they were 5-on-5 as well.
It's awesome.
So they did a nice job all the way around. Shout out to the local team, Wheeling Park. Saturday they played 2 games, went into overtime on both games. First game, I believe everything's gelling together on me. I do believe that they beat Lindsley the first game, and then they took on who did they even play? Game 2. Martinsburg was the first game. The goalie had a great game. Noah Britton, he was MVP of that game. A lot of kids looked very good. Number 12, Landon Straczynski, had an overtime goal in both games.
Wow.
To send the Patriots ahead. The first game, it came pretty quick. I think it was like 37 seconds in or whatever.
Oh, wow.
And then the last one, it was a little bit more towards the end. So hats off to Landon for doing a nice job in that game as well. And then Morgantown ended up winning the whole thing. They first took care of Wheeling Central on Saturday, and then they played Wheeling Park on Sunday, and did a nice job. There was a number 10 for them, Gino Valetti, who just looks incredible on the ice. Morgantown was a big team, but when I say big, they were tall and long. They were like long and lanky. They had really good reach. They had nice speed because every time they would take a stride, they would cover so much ground. So that helped them a lot. Morgantown is a bit of a composite team. It's not the Mohegans. It's the Mohawks. Their team's comprised of kids from Morgantown University and I think 2 or 3 other high schools.
Oh, wow.
So, I mean, that gets tough. And we've dealt with that in lacrosse and stuff like that. It just comes with the territory. You know what you're getting into. And you play these teams through the year. Wheeling Park did beat them earlier in the year. I think the 2 overtime games that Wheeling Park played on Saturday took a little bit out of them. Morgantown was top seeded. They only had to play 1 game, Wheeling Central on Saturday. So they were still pretty fresh. That game was decided early on. So if the coach wanted to rest some of the players later in the game, he had the ability to do so.
Right.
Although he didn't rest too many, in all fairness, because Wheeling Central just didn't give up. It was a good weekend. It was a good hockey weekend.
I know. I was literally, anytime I had a chance in between matches that I was emceeing, I was like double checking to see any of your updates or anything from there. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be back here in just a minute. Maybe our tardy host is co-host has finally shown up. So we'll take a quick break. We'll be right back here in just a few seconds, guys. And we're back.
Hey, we're back.
Somebody finally got
Athletics,
here.
I finally got here. You know, as the host, you know, you can always, I guess, write the show and take the time. We got here a little late, but we want to start off, Zach. I think I was late because I was doing my protein shakes.
Oh.
from Ohio Valley Nutrition, St. Clairsville.
That's a good term.
You pick up your peanut butter cup, delicious in your coffee in the morning, gives you that extra protein. Also, the brownie milkshake, we're waiting for that to come back in, a top seller, so it's sold out, waiting for that to come back in stock. Also, you can get your creatine.
We know that stage just a little bit because we already sold you out to the audience on where you were.
We already sold it. Yep.
I guess I was filling my body with protein.
We sold you so down the river so fast. We did.
I know what happens to people that aren't here. I do realize that.
I was gonna say, we didn't think twice about it either.
I don't think you should do that to the host, though. I don't know why you do that to the host. So I guess, the creatine and the vitamins. The vitamins didn't help me get in here any quicker, or the creatine. Maybe I'll have to work on my speed training a little bit. Thank you goes out to Brad Swan at Swan Sports Shop, too. Hey, all your athletic needs, whether you need T-shirts made, whether you need a pair of cleats, basketball shoes, training shoes, just anything, any sports equipment you could think of. If he doesn't have it in the store, he's going to get it for you. He knows all the vendors, and he'll take care of you. I'm working with him on something for our track team as well, for some uniforms. So trusted. I've worked with him for over 15 years, and never let me down. On anything. So go to Swan Sports Shop in St. Clairsville. While you're over there, go to High Valley Nutrition, pick yourself up some protein powders, some creatine, and some vitamins, Zach.
There we go.
Yeah.
That was pretty good. He literally sat down and I said, hey, you've got 30 seconds and you're doing an ad read, so let's get to it. If I take too long, my wife is going to throw things at me. Maybe a snowball or something. I guess we'll see what happens.
It'd be more of an ice ball out there, Zach, and that's going to hurt, I'm going to tell you.
It's not going to be fun.
Hey, for as tiny as she is, it can be a lot of feistiness there, maybe.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Definitely. Let's get started with some boys basketball, Zach. I got a couple games here. John Marshall over St. Clairsville, 69-55 down at the field house. The Monarchs played really well. The Sabucas are always going to come out and play well. St. Clairsville was able to close that gap a little bit. I think it was 1 point game in the third quarter, but John Marshall went on a little run and was able to close it out 69-55.
That feels like a big win for me, or big win for John Marshall for me. I mean, St. Clairsville is always tough. We know they have athletes out the yin yang out there.
Yeah.
So I think that's a great win for John Marshall. I know that they kind of needed the boys needed a little bit of a get right game. I know they've been a little streaky this year, so maybe this is one of those things that they can maybe start streaking in the right direction as opposed to in the wrong direction.
Yeah, and they got the consolations coming up next week for the boys for the OVAC tournament. So We'll see who the Monarchs match up against. St. Clairsville, we'll get to them a little later on with the Buckeye 8 tournament, and then they'll have some consolation games as well. Moving on to one of John Marshall's biggest rivals, Wheeling Park Patriots, get a big win over the Buchanan Upshur, the Buccaneers. The Patriots came out quickly thanks to 4 3-pointers by Aiden Davis. Hey, he's a sophomore, hitting 3-pointers, and we talk about those all the time, Zach. The teams like to shoot it from the cheap seats now. They like to shoot the 3-pointers. I guess they're worth more than the 2. He goes on to score 30 points.
I mean, it's impressive, especially when you see that large of a contribution from that young of an athlete. That's always extremely impressive.
So, ended up the game 7 behind the 3-point line. And here you go, Zach. 9 rebounds. So 30 points, 9 rebounds.
Let's go.
And it just seems like, a basketball player like Aiden, it's not always the biggest guys or the strongest guys on those rebounds. It's just playing a lot of basketball and just knowing where the basketball is going to be when it comes off the rim. And you're able to collect a lot of rebounds that way. And then Michael Davis comes up with 9 points for the Patriots.
And that same point is, I don't know if you've ever seen Michael, but he's not really the biggest, longest type kid either. So he's kind of in that smaller role where he was definitely a ball handler when he was in middle school. And I think that translated a lot to his high school game. And now he's gotten taller since then, because I always used to make little short jokes at him, and he was never a huge fan of me for doing that. Yeah. But Michael's a heck of an athlete. He's one of those guys that's very similar to Aiden. Their play styles are extremely similar.
Yeah.
How they're going to find that space, they're going to take their shot, and they're going to do a good job when they have their opportunity.
So, of course, we talked John Marshall. We talk Wheeling Park. Hey, we'll stay in the Northern Panhandle with Quad A schools in basketball. We have Brook over Magnolia, 68-58 in the Rotary Classic. The Bruins put together a great game. Coach Sokovic and I got to see them this year against Belair. They played pretty tough. Hey, Peyton Topher, great game. 28 points. Look at these kids. They're scoring, Aiden Davis scoring 30. Peyton Topher scoring 28. Hey, his brother said, I can score, I can put the ball in the basket too a little bit. Leighton put in 18, 6 assists, and then Nick Cipoletti came in with 15.
I gotta take a time out there for a second.
Hey, go ahead.
What are those parents doing naming kids Peyton and Leighton? It's almost as bad as my mom naming myself Zach and my brother Jack. It's like you're just a glutton for punishment.
Hey, I'm going to tell you this: they're twins, and people. I know a lot of people with twins, and they like either the rhyming or the same first letter. It seems like, and even kids, that's just what they like to do. And maybe they thought they'd always be in the stat sheet together. So it's like, if we mess up the names and switch them up, maybe nobody will really notice. Maybe they were waiting on them to be on OV Athletics, and they thought, hey, they're going to screw this up at some point, so we'll just close together, and then you could say mumble your way through it.
Although, I mean, I guess it does make it easier on the parents because you could just yell Aiton, and somebody's going to respond.
Somebody's going to respond. Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely. How about moving across the river?
There we go.
We're moving across the river. How about Shady Side? The boys basketball, didn't start off real strong this year, but boy, they're playing well as of late. They beat the Bulldogs 72-36. Doubled them up, doubled the Bulldogs.
I know we talked about them early in the season because they were taking a couple on the nose there. I remember, I think probably like 4 or 5 that they lost early in the season, and they weren't necessarily the best of games for Shady Side. But I mean, if there's ever a time to get right, it's this time of the year.
It's at the end of the year. You're going into that OVAC tournament. You're going to go into your state tournament, and you want to be playing well. Hey, Dylan Booth for the Tigers, great game, 17 points. Again, 5 3-pointers. We talk about and they're a great equalizer. Ben Walk, 16. And senior Elijah Brock, 15 points. So, pretty even scoring. When you have 3 people scoring in the teens, 3 boys scoring in the teens, it's going to help your team out.
Yeah, and then we go to the Bulldogs. The Bulldogs were paced by Colin Jackson with 13, which is pretty much almost a third of what they scored, if not a little bit more than a third.
Yeah.
It's a little tough when you're only getting 36 points and you have one person contributing about a third of your offense. Yeah, and it shows that either he's really good or the rest of the team needs a little bit more development.
Colin can play some basketball. I know, worth the price of admission to go watch him play. He's a good basketball player. I know we've talked about him here. Great to see him play a little bit there. Score 13 for the Bulldogs. A little bit from that supporting cast, maybe, a little further on in the season. I know it's late in the season, but hey, a couple more games, get ready for that playoff run. Next, Charleston Catholic and Wheeling Central. Could we call it the Holy War?
Holy War or some Holy Rollers or something.
Yeah, something. I think maybe Holy War, Holy Rollers.
Holy Rollers, I think it'd be if they had a bowling team.
Okay. How about Holy Hoopsters?
Oh, there we go.
Hey, how about that? Charleston Catholic gets the victory 52-44. And I know, Central, again, just like Shady Side, didn't start off the year. They had a couple wins and then a little losing streak. And now, this game was a big one for them. They're a young team starting, I think, 4 new kids this year. But weren't able quite to come up with a victory there. Lost by 8. Max Olase led the team with Central with 14.
Yeah,
Oleash led with 14, and Jeremy Radcliffe added 12 for the Maroon Knights.
See, I knew how to say that one. I'm not exactly sure how I knew how to say that one, but here we are.
You have it, yeah. So
listen, it's been a while since we've done since we've done our basketball pick'em. Yeah. I know we sort of got away from that a little bit because with us doing episodes, a lot of recording on Thursday. I made my sweeping declaration during football. I would have continued it into basketball. So I would have got this one right.
You would have won this one.
Just because of my petty sweeping declaration, not because I knew anything about either team.
Hey, how about moving back across the river? So we're going back and forth across the river, crossing all those bridges down through the Ohio River. Boys Buckeye 8 action. Okay. So the Buckeye 8 holds a tournament kind of similar to the OVAC tournament. They rank the teams, in the Buckeye 8. Hey,
are there actually 8 teams, or is it kind of how like the Pac-12 says there's 12 teams, or the Big 12 says there's 12
It all depends on what year it is, whether there's 8, whether there's 10, whether there's 12. They've added and taken away, and some great action. And this one surprised me. Harrison Central comes in around a 500 basketball team. They come in at 8-7. They're playing the undefeated Martins Ferry Purple Riders, who are 14-0 coming into this game. They're playing over at Belair. And Harrison Central comes up with a big win. Buckeye 8 champions. They beat the formerly undefeated Purple Riders 88-79. And I think it's starting to click for Harrison Central. I think they had an injury earlier in the season. And just some again, even scoring across the board. Hayden Cassidy led Harrison had 20 for Harrison. Mike Alquido had a career high of 27 points. How many guys were all getting, we had Aiden Davis score 30. We have Mikkel scoring 27.
Yep.
And then they had Jace Madzia, 13. So, tough to stop for Martins Ferry. Coming into the game, we've talked about Delani Jackson for Martins Ferry, 31 points. So now we have two 30-point scorers in the Valley. But Reese added 21 points, but he fouled out. Big guy.
Right.
For Martins Ferry. They had a freshman come off the bench, score 17 for him, but wasn't quite enough. That's a high-scoring game for high school basketball.
The problem if I coached basketball would be that I'd tell everybody, you got 5 fouls, you better use them all. I'd run out of people on the bench real quick. So I kind of like seeing that, but it's really great. This game to me epitomizes what we love about sports, is that you have that team that's a little bit of an underdog that can come and make that upset and win that Buckeye 8 tournament. But it also is kind of a heartbreak for Martins Ferry. It's like one of those things you want to see. You like the story of, hey, that team that went on a big long run and whether they can keep it going. But you also like that little bit of David versus Goliath sort of mentality.
Definitely.
There. So it's one of those things. It's that double-edged sort of, local sports in particular. You want to root for one of those teams that's going real strong, but it's also kind of cool when you get that upset.
Yeah, and great for Harrison, maybe pushing them into the playoffs. And then Martins Ferry maybe saying, hey, we were 14-0, but we still have some work to do. So,
push them into the playoffs. Ohio let everybody in for football. They might as well do the same with basketball.
Basketball, everybody is in. Everybody, just like West Virginia, everybody makes it. And if you go on a run, you go on a run.
There.
Oh, yeah.
It was right there. I had to make that.
So now down through, you have your championship game. Then you have a 3rd and 4th place game. We had the Belair Big Reds and the Indian Creek Redskins. Hey, the Big Reds, we knew they were undefeated to start out the season. Coach Sokovic and I, we got to see them play up at Brook. Then they went on a little bit of a losing streak. I think they lost 4 or 5 in a row. They're back on the winning skid again. The 2 wins in a row after a 6-game losing skid with a victory. 3rd place finish in the tournament for the Buckeye 8. Mason Socher, again, 23 points. Mac Pettigrew and Jacob Dowling for Belair each had 10. That pressure defense just, all game. It's full court, forcing those mistakes. And Indian Creek had some turnovers in this one, paced by Luca Morelli's 14 and Drake Freshwater's 13. Couldn't quite get over that hump. That pressure defense from Belair, ended up winning them the game.
Yeah, I don't really have a whole lot to add there. Right? You're pretty comprehensive in your coverage.
Yeah, I do my best. Seeing these teams play, knowing the players, and just seeing how Coach Batista had that team riding high, and then a long 6-game losing streak. Winning is contagious, just like losing is contagious. And you get on those winning streaks, and then you lose one, and you feel not invincible anymore. And now you're a little bit of winning streak toward late in the season. I think that's going to help in the tournament.
Oh, it'll for sure.
Yeah, definitely.
For sure will help.
Then we have a 5th and 6th place game. You have the Jets of Union Local, beat Beaver Local 59-37. Hey, the Jets had a loss earlier in the week. Get a solid win over a good Beaver Local team. They pulled away from the win for the win. They had a big 3rd quarter, outscored Beaver Local by 13. DJ Butts and Beezer Porter went for 16 and 13 respectively. They led UL. Another great game. Beaver Local, Owen Hill had 14. Another good game, and it's nice to have these, I think, consolation games. So you can have a 1st place, and then you have a 3rd, and then you have a 5th.
Yeah.
So kind of rank them.
And not to take anything away from Beaver Local here, but to me, when I see this score and I see how, not necessarily tight the other 2 games were, but how much more competitive those games were, it kind of seems like to me in the Buckeye 8 that maybe this is where the cream sort of rose to the top. Because that 5th place right around there was right around 5th, 6th place is right around where that separation, that drop off kind of happens.
Yeah.
You see it a lot of times in those sports leagues where you have the people that are up near the top that are really strong, and then as you sort of slide down the rankings, you see that sort of begin to separate a little bit there.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And then, hey, the 7th, 8th place game. I told you we'd come back to the Red Devils. They get back in the win column over Edison, 86-38. So 86 points, that's a lot of points to score in those 8-minute quarters. They had a 20-point lead after one, and they just never looked back. You get that 20-point lead. It's just so tough if you're the team that's down. You got to change up your defense. Put some pressure, do some traps. They were getting some run-out baskets. Hey, St. Clairsville's a little bit young. Sophomore Tyson Pastor led everybody in scoring with 22. Junior Cole Thoburn had 14. Caden Clifford had 14, and sophomore Brady Schaefer had 10. So, as you look at those scores, you have juniors, 2 sophomores, and a freshman. So, we talked about them a little earlier against John Marshall. Then they come back with this win. I think they might be a team to deal with here coming up in the next couple years.
Well, it's definitely a resounding comeback win. I mean, it's really, really, when you see almost a 50-point margin in basketball, it's nothing to sneeze at.
Yeah.
And those contributions coming from those young kids means to me that I think if this may not be St. Clairsville's year, but that year might be coming up.
Yeah.
When you get that many strong contributions from those young kids.
Yeah, definitely. Edison, 21 points from Braden Moses. Good game from him. Just didn't have anything to really back it up there a little bit for Edison. But again, the season's not over. You're still going to build. You're still going to practice and get ready for those playoffs.
Right.
How about some mad action next, Zach?
We're gonna pin down some action.
I am. I'm gonna maybe run the whizzer on you. Maybe get you a little shoot the half. We'll do something here. Halfway through, maybe.
We'll sprawl out some good information for you here.
There you go.
There we go.
I was going to come up with something else, Zach, but I don't think I want to do that right now. It's during the day on the air. We're live. So how about the Panther Classic at Buckeye Local? Martins Ferry finishes second overall. So they tallied 192.5 points. But there's a team that came up from a little bit south and east of us from Fairmont. 326 points for the Fairmont Senior Polar Bears.
Good Lord.
So they, congratulations to Fairmont for winning the tournament. Fairmont Senior, apologies, but Martins Ferry, a local team able to finish second. And I know we've talked about him before. Jace Mahoney finished second at 113. Dylan Ward was second at 120. It seems like every time we talk about the Martins Ferry wrestling team, these names come up. 2 tight weight classes, I'm going to guess, at practice. They probably go against each other a good bit, just being so close in weight. And probably what makes them so good.
Well, I mean, when I see that, second. Fairmont Senior's not coming that far to lose. I mean, it's one of those things, like you have those teams that are scheduling weird games. Yeah. They're not coming that far to lose. Yeah. And that's a tough team, and that's a pretty significant margin in a wrestling match.
Definitely.
Goodness gracious.
Definitely. Yeah, they were really scoring the points. How about some local finishers? Indian Creek's CJ Spencer won the 150-pound title. Edison's Gabriel Glenn at 285 were the only 2 winners from our area schools.
In my experience, that 285 weight class is either really saturated with people or there's no pun intended here actually, but it's kind of thin at that weight class. Again, not trying. That one actually, I'm not kind of meaning it, but okay, I kind of am meaning it. But it's either like there's a lot of people there, or it's kind of thinner weight class, not weight wise, but a number of people in it.
Okay.
You either have a lot of them or you don't have a lot of them, because it's like either people are going to cut to try to get down a little bit to a less competitive weight class, or you have those people that aren't willing to work as hard and sometimes get a little bit beat up at that weight class just because of the nature of the heavier weight classes.
Okay. Now we're in Yorkville area for the Panther Classic. Let's go up to Brook for the Brook Classic. Wheeling Park finishes second place. So they had 4 champions, but had to settle for second overall in team to Spring Mills at the Fred Ferguson Brook Classic. Hey, again, as we talk about wrestling in Wheeling Park, we talk about these names all the time. We have Braden Lucas at 144, won a Parks champion. Quentin Vilas, 150. Eric Brothers, Jr., 215, and Hunter Means at that 285 class that you like so much.
I feel like we've talked about Eric Brothers so much on the STREAMcast. I mean, he's always wrestling. I mean, we talked about him in football as well. I mean, he's just one of those well-rounded athletes there for Wheeling Park High School. Had
a great finish at the OVAC as well, so he comes back and finishes champion there up at Brook.
Again, and then when we see Spring Mills travel to Brook, they're not coming here unless they got a good chance to win. When you see, again, Fairmont Senior coming up, Spring Mills coming up. It's not that there's a lack of tournaments down there. It's just that they want another chance at it. They want more reps. They want more reps against people that they're not going to see regularly before the state tournament.
Maybe see somebody else, or maybe they want to get a couple kids that they know they're going to see in the state tournament to kind of see how they match up.
Sometimes with Spring Mills, I believe they're Eastern Panhandle, right? So a lot of times you'll see them wrestle a lot of matches in Maryland and a lot of matches in Virginia as well.
They're right
so
there.
It wouldn't surprise me at all when you see them come to this little bit of ways. Is you're going to see a lot of the teams that you're going to see downstate as well. So it's one of those things: get you exposure, get you some experience with some of those people that you're going to be wrestling against in the state wrestling tournament.
Hey, Zach, how about we make a splash next?
Oh, we're going to dive right in?
We are. Right to the Steubenville invite. I was at the OVAC swim meet, so a lot of these names are pretty familiar to me. Up at Steubenville, the Lindsley girls and St. Clairsville boys got the team prizes. The Lindsley cadets finished 127 points for the girls, and St. Clairsville boys were able to get 87 points to get the victory on the boys' side. St. Clairsville girls, second place with 73 points. Indian Creek, team with 81 points, finished second for the boys. Great meet. Steubenville, great facility. I think even Brooke had to borrow something from them up there when they were running the OVAC.
Yeah, so the St. Clairsville pool was really good, and for when the OVAC Steubenville, Steubenville. Yes, we're talking about St. Clairsville. A little brain fart there, but Steubenville used to host the OVACs before they went to Brooke. Like I think they were at Brooke for a little bit, and they bounced to Steubenville, and they bounced back to Brooke. I know Steubenville had probably about a 5, maybe 6 year window where they hosted the OVACs there as well. They've got a great facility for it. The pool. I always used to joke the water was a little bit warmer there than I was used to, as Lindsley's pool a lot of times was a little bit colder.
Okay.
The one year that I swam.
Do you swim faster in cold water because you want to get out quicker?
I mean, I didn't swim faster ever.
I guess more quickly. I don't know how I'd describe it.
I mean, it didn't bother me. I have the same adaptation that most whales do. Nice layer of blubber to protect me from the cold.
Okay.
Yeah.
How about we'll start with the girls' side for the Steubenville invite. Lindsley's junior Anna Norman got it kicked off, capturing the 200 free, 209.72. She got a second victory in the 100 fly with a 106.68. So, there's 2 titles for the Lindsley girls. Junior Berta Roca, she got the 200 individual medley in 223.76. So Lindsley just kept rolling, and here they go. Some more championships for them. Liv Torner won the 500 free, and then she, again, back in the winner's circle, the 100 backstroke. Yep. So here comes Lindsley. They keep winning. It's just like watching the OVACs all over again. Here's some more Lindsley cadets on the girls' side. Sarah Koa won the 500 free. That race, the 500 free, I bet that wasn't yours, was it, Zach?
No, it was not. We've talked about the 500 free. I was the sign holder for my friend who swam the 500 free because, they put the little signs down in the water to tell them how many laps, what lap they're on, so they don't lose count of them. No, that was not my event.
Yeah, and my question was, I was asking some of the swimmers, can you actually see the numbers? And they're like, yeah, you look at them, and I said, can you hear them when they're yelling them out? And they're like, no. And I said, don't you just need the red one? Because that's last. With the last lap, I think they used just a red card to hold down. I'm like, that's the only one I would need. I'm like, just swim as fast as you can, and then when you see that red thing in the water, okay, this is the last one.
Yeah, I know the one that I used to do the card for my friend that did it. And literally the last one was just a big, bright red square. So they were all numbers counting down. And I'd be like, did I mess up? Whatever. But once you get to that red square, you're kind of validated. Like, okay, I didn't mess up. Yeah. This is the last lap. He's ready to go.
So Lindsley comes back. So we have individual titles. Okay, now here we go. Torner, Koa, Roca, and Norman had a 158.27, and they won the 200 medley relay.
I'm willing to bet that Torner probably was the one swimming the backstroke in that medley, just because of the fact when you see that she's so strong in the 100 backstroke, she's definitely the one that's probably going to be carrying that position in the medley.
Yeah,
which is the medley is a little bit nicer because everybody's swimming a 50.
Oh yeah.
So each person's swimming a 50. So you mix up all the different types of strokes and then you go from there.
I would like that one a lot better.
Different strokes for different folks.
I guess
unintended. There we go, Tom. You're welcome.
How about we had all the individual titles for Lindsley.
Yep.
We had a medley relay. Now they're gonna get their second relay victory, the 200 free with Ferrero, Julie Sales, Koa, and Norman with a 152.96. So they get another title. Not to be outdone though, St. Clairsville comes back in the 400 free relay, gets a 4:17.56. The team of Claire Daubenmeyer, Lucy Banks, Grace May, and Adrian Lowe come back, and they kind of win an event, take one maybe away from the Lindsley cadets there.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like it was all Lindsley up to this point in that 400 one. I know it was typically a little bit later in the day, so I wonder if Lindsley kind of got gassed in some of those other events.
Possibly.
Or, I mean...
This St. Clair, I'm going to tell you, this St. Clairsville team...
Not to take anything away from them,
they were really good. They also won the OVAC. So this team also did really well at the OVAC. I can remember them. I think I know Claire's mom. I taught with her at St. Clairsville.
I mean, when you see a bunch of these names, that from Lindsley that have swum in so many events, a lot of times, sometimes if you have them swimming some other events, sometimes you'll maybe put your B team on another event and give them a chance to maybe get on the podium too. Okay. Not taking anything away from St. Clairsville, but maybe Lindsley spread out their talent a little bit more on that on the 400 there as well.
Yeah. Now switching over to the boys' side, we talked about St. Clairsville with the team. The first individual winner came with junior Evan Yost. He won the 200 individual medley, 205.55, and then he comes up with a second title in the 100 free in 51.5. So he won by over 4 seconds. That's a whole bunch.
That's a lot. That's a lot in swimming.
Especially in the 100 free.
Yeah.
That's a whole bunch. When you're at 50 seconds and you're beating somebody by 4, he's pretty good. I can remember him again from the OVACs, and it doesn't.
It's like that St. Clairsville. It's like that St. Clairsville basketball game. That's a huge margin. To the people that aren't familiar with swimming, I mean, that's literally like a 50-point margin in basketball. I mean, it's huge, especially in one of those shorter events.
Yeah.
I mean, 100 frees just down and back twice. I mean, it's quick.
Yeah.
It's quick.
Yeah.
And that's the one that we had a lot of people that were pretty strong. Like, I always called them sprinters, but because it's essentially the same thing.
Oh yeah, I think they're okay being called sprinters, even though they're swimming.
But I mean, it's fast. It's a fast event. As
St. Clairsville won the team title, they won a medley title. So the team Yost was in the medley along with Luke Stack, Zach May, and Brady Blacker. With the medley relay of 151.19, again, they're a very strong team.
Yeah, so I mean, if Yost is kicking that much butt in the 100 free, he's probably swimming the free part of that relay and probably gave you a pretty decent cushion on either end of that relay as well.
How about, it seems like, we talked about the Lindsley girls with all those titles, and now we're talking about St. Clairsville on the boys' side. Another relay win with Yost, Blacker, Stack, and May. Same team. Yep. OVACs, they did really well. They had a 341.83 in the 400 free relay to capture another title for the day.
It's impressive.
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, yeah, when you see like free, medley, like, I mean, with all those swimming together, I mean, it's tough to win that many events in a competition like this.
Yeah. How about, moving on to some other schools, we had Martins Ferry senior John Consort. He swam a 149.49 and won the 200 free. He won another title in the 100 breaststroke at 103.89. Again, another great day for him. When you can come away with 2 championships in individual events, you're doing pretty well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, definitely. And then, getting into another relay team, the team of Colin Krantz, Hunter Runsnick, Franklin Mazzafaro, and Cy Howe from Indian Creek. They won the 200 free in 141.35. So congratulations out to that Indian Creek team. Yeah. And it's good to see some different schools represented. St. Clairsville, Martins Ferry, Indian Creek. In a tournament like this or a meet like this.
Yeah, I mean, and two good meets. That you were able to see them at OVACs, and then we're seeing them here. You know what else you could see?
What's that, Zach?
You could see yourself on a great vacation if you go see our friends at See for Yourself.
Oh, yeah, go see them.
Nice little transition there.
It is. Whether you want to maybe go, we had the snowfall today. Maybe you're like, oh, I want to go skiing. Or you're like, I see the snow today and I don't want to see it again. Either way, just go to them and say, I love seeing the snow or I don't like seeing the snow. And they'll set you up with a nice vacation.
Maybe they have nice deals on places that serve lunch a little quickly.
Moving on, the little girls' basketball action. So,
couldn't help myself. It was right there.
I don't know if AAA has that in their book.
They might not. They might not.
All right, so a couple Wheeling Park scores on the girls' side, and then we'll get to some OVAC action from last night. So, late last week, Wheeling Park, again, rival John Marshall. Wheeling Park got a big win, 93-57, but the Monarchs surprised early. They were up 8-4. They were up 12-10, causing Coach Young to take a couple timeouts. John Marshall was able to beat that pressure. And when you get behind that pressure and you're scoring some layups, you start thinking to yourself, are they going to do this all night? But Park came back out of that second timeout. They went on a run to take a 26-17 lead after a quarter, so a 9-point cushion. But I tell you what, the Monarchs kept it close for most of the second quarter, just hanging around. And then when a team hangs around like that, that other team starts getting a little doubt in their mind. Maybe we're not playing as well. What are they doing, against us that's causing them to play so well? How are they so close? And you start tightening up a little bit, but then they start hitting some shots.
Yep.
and took a 22-point lead at the halftime. But it was a 9-point game, 10-point game, with just about 3 minutes left in the half. And then Park went on a little bit of a run to take a big halftime lead.
You're always interested on how a team's going to hold up to a little bit of adversity when they haven't seen a lot of it this season. I know Park's only lost, maybe a few? One?
One.
One? I was going to say one or two.
They lost one.
And so you're wondering how they're going to see how that adversity is going to hit them.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's a little bit tight. Coach Young's got to be pleased with how they pulled away from that adversity and pulled off so quickly in that second quarter to go into the halftime.
And then they came out in the third and just turned up the pressure some more. Went up 40 after 3. And not looking back after that. Some stat lines. We go over them all the time. Alexis Bordas, another great game across the board. 20 points, 6 steals, 3 assists, 3 rebounds. So, when you're putting a stat sheet like that, you're like, okay, so Alexis had a good game. Then Lala Woods comes in, 19 points, 8 steals, 7 assists, and you're like, I didn't think the stat line could get better. And then you're getting Sophie Abraham with 17, Merritt Delk with a career-high 15 and 6 rebounds. Natalie Doherty comes in with 10 points, 5 steals, 4 assists, and 4 rebounds. So these stat lines, they're not just scoring points, they're not just getting rebounds and steals, they're getting assists. And it's just 4 or 5 girls across the board. It's tough to beat.
And when you see that many steals for a team, their hustle is so high, and they're just turning the pressure on. And you always say it all the time, pressure either breaks glass or makes diamonds.
Yeah.
Well, it seems like for Wheeling Park, it's made a lot of diamonds.
Yeah, definitely. And Joe Marshall had some good outings. Caitlin Blake, we've talked about her all season. 23 points and 11 boards. That's a great game. And even Coach Young, after the game, he had mentioned how well she played, and they were having a hard time in that first quarter stopping her in the post. Freshman Riley Storm had 18, and Kaylee Darrow came up with 12 for the Monarchs. They just couldn't, that defense. You're giving up 93 points. That's pretty tough. But against a Park team that just had across the board, they're bringing kids in off the bench that are scoring in the teens.
Yeah, it's tough. It's tough to do.
Yeah. So
and they've got a deep bench too.
Again,
they do.
They had Wheeling Park played Buchanan Upshur. I know we did the boys against Buchanan, and then they played a girls game against Buchanan. Park comes up with a win, 65-50. The Buchanan girls recently have been pretty good. I got to see them play a couple years ago. Went down to Buchanan, and they played really well against the Monarchs. Again, Alexis Bordas, 18 points, 8 boards, 6 steals. But she's not the only one. Natalie Doherty, 15 points. So Sophie Abraham, 12 points. So across the board, they're getting some even scoring. Yep. So they're going to be tough to beat. And we got the OVAC coming up this weekend, and we're going to get to see them play. Can't wait. That's going to be another good matchup. We'll get to that in a little bit. Here it comes. The Holy Hoopster.
Holy Hoopsters.
On the girls' side, Wheeling Central able to pick up the win against Charleston Catholic, 56 to a 44. Again, Central, they shoot the 3-pointers. Just all across the board, they shoot the 3-pointers. Brooke Edge had 21. Kira Wilkerson had 15. And like I said, Wheeling Central, that girls' team really likes to put up those 3-pointers. Moving on, I guess. Staying in Wheeling, staying in those private schools in Wheeling, Lindsley got a big win over Barnesville, 62 to 50. Halen Cook, leading scorer in the game, had 23. Miriam Martinez is back for the cadets. She had 19, and Rosa Solberg had 9. To lead Lindsley with the big win over the Shamrocks.
I know Lindsley had a little bit of that injury bug earlier in the season, where they had a little bit that they had of adversity they had to overcome with. I think they're finally getting healthy. They're finally getting right and starting to play strong at the end of the year here.
Yeah, the Shamrocks, Alyssa Carter had 14, and Madeline Tyson had 11. Just couldn't get that next score, maybe to come in and give you some points to make that game a little closer. Again, on the girls' side, Bridgeport over Payton City, the Bulldogs over the Wildcats, 59-34. Little young here for the Bulldogs. Freshman Hannah Brewer had 19, and Kaylee Bain had 9 for the Bulldogs.
I can't remember if it's been in basketball this season that we've mentioned Hannah Brewer before, if it might have even dipped back into volleyball. I'm not sure if she's a volleyball player or not. I feel like we've mentioned her name.
Yeah, I think it was basketball. It might have been both.
I can't remember, but I feel like we've mentioned her name on the STREAMcast a couple times.
Yeah, and as a freshman coming in and scoring 19 points in a varsity basketball game, that's really good.
Really good. I feel like we mentioned her. It might have been volleyball. I can't. I'm sure I may be wrong. If anybody knows, correct me, please.
Yeah. Moving on, I talked about these OVAC semis last night. The finals are set for the OVAC for this Saturday over at Harrison Central at the new high school. Hey, let's start off with the single A champion, the Cameron Dragons. Big win, 85-29 over the 100 Hornets. And, kind of getting ready. Cameron's, they had a tough one against Parkersburg South last week. They played Lindsley. They played Morgantown. They play all these teams across the state and in the valley. And then they match up against 100, another single-A team, and just not enough horses. I mean, Kenzie Clutter led the Dragons in double digits. She had 20. 4 3-pointers for Kenzie. She's so quick on the floor, a real leader out there. She's going to lead that team and get you where you need to be on offense and defense. Just a great basketball mind. Probably, I'd say, it comes a little bit from dad and watching older brothers play a little bit. But good basketball player. When you talk about basketball player, Kenzie Clutters, she shoots, she handles the ball, she plays defense, floor leader, just all across the board. Ashlyn Van Tassel had 14. Emily Dobbs and Macy Neely both had 13 to lead the Dragons there. Not to be outdone though. 100. Ashlyn Peters had 19.
More than half of their points.
So a really good basketball player there. Had a nice showing from the free throw line, 10 for 14. But just wasn't not enough for the Dragons.
We kind of expected this coming out of Cameron, just because they've played such a tough schedule all season.
Yeah.
That we thought once they started getting into some, playing around their weight class in terms, not saying that they're not a talented team.
Very talented.
When they start playing teams that were around similar size to them, we were going to see them really start to excel. Yeah. And obviously, almost 60-point victory kind of pokes at that a little.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And then they'll be playing the Frontier Cougars, who beat Trinity Christian yesterday 59-33 in the other semifinal. So looking forward to that matchup, Cameron and Frontier for the single-A championship over at Harrison Central. How about 3A?
3A.
So go from 1A to 3A, and you know who's in 3A, right, Zach? The Union Local Jets.
Yep.
They moved to 20-0 on the season. 20-0 on the season. They beat Belair 50-21. And the normal names: Reagan Vincevich, 21; Tori Kildow, 15; Lauren Miller, Lauren Miller's a good basketball player.
Great
she can
basketball
shoot the ball. She added 7. They're going to move on to play Fort Fry. We'll get to their game in a minute. Blair, Allie Alt had 9, and Zara Harveth, who I know we've mentioned Zara a couple times this season, had 7. But that Union local team and their pressure. And just their offense and just the way they run things, it's really tough to get a victory. And when you're 20-0, you're a good basketball team.
When it feels like to me that Union Local's kind of been in a field of their own all season. That they're definitely the toast of that class, to be sure.
Oh,
and
yeah.
It seems like I know you guys have seen them play, once or twice this season in person.
Yeah.
Just a tough team. And you don't get to 20-0. You just don't get there unless you're a really good basketball team.
Yeah.
It's clear to see. It just talking about them week in, week out. Just a really, really strong team. And they're just as good defensively as they are offensively.
And look for OVAthletics.com coming out with something on the Jets later this week. Excited to see them at 20-0. We'd love to watch their volleyball run. So look for something on OVA Athletics later this week with Union Local. On the other side of that, on the other semifinal, Fort Fry over Martins Ferry, 49-26. Fort Fry, really good basketball program over there on the girls' side. Alyssa Dusky led Fort Fry with 12. Emmy Dusky and Kierna O'Brien each had 11. So even scoring across the board, Again, Martins Ferry's pretty young. Sophomore Lindsey Bell led all scorers in the game with 14. I think it's going to be a great matchup. Fort Fry and Union Local, I think it's going to be a great matchup for that 3A title.
It's going to be a lot of fun.
Definitely. How about from 3A to 4A, and we'll go to the Redskins and the Panthers. Indian Creek over Buckeye Local, 70-36. To punch their ticket to the championship for Indian Creek. They've been playing well all season. Again, another good basketball program in the area. Kylie Anderson had 24 points for Indian Creek and 13 rebounds. I know you like the rebounders.
I love rebounds.
Zach, so 24 and 13. Great stat line. Gabby Taylor had 15, Tori Robinson 12, and Maddie Bellato had 11. So, you get those scores across the board. Just tough to stop. When you watch film on them and you scout them, it's just like, who do we stop? Somebody's scoring double digits. You have 4 girls scoring double digits.
Yeah, it's hard to do.
Yeah. Buckeye Local, Pam Kandrak paced Buckeye Local. She had 16 with 12 rebounds.
12 rebounds is awesome.
16 and 12. And Bryn McKeever had 10 points. So, great games for them, but a little too much to overcome. Indian Creek's a really good basketball team. They'll be playing the Oak Glen Golden Bears. Now, they start off the season a little rough. They were 1-5. They've won 7 out of their last 13 games, so a little bit.
Yeah.
And they were the 3 seed coming in and got a big 53-33 win over number 2 seed Harrison Central. So the home team is not going to be playing in the championship, unfortunately for Harrison Central. But Oak Glen, again, a good basketball program. That's going to be a great game. Lizzie Kell had a game-high 16 points. Alexis Greenleaf and Carson Barr each had 9 for the Oak Glen Golden Bears. Great games for those ladies. They're going to be playing for a championship. It's going to be a great game. Can't wait to watch. Maddie Butler and Angie Ferry led the Huskies with 10 points for Maddie Butler and 8 points for Angie Ferry. They both hit a couple 3-pointers. We always talk about how the threes are, the great equalizer, but not quite enough to get the win over Oak Glen. Oak Glen's really rolling, getting on that track for OVAC and then to the state tournament in West Virginia.
They got hot at the right time.
Yeah.
And that upset win, is it going to be enough to carry the momentum against a tough opponent?
No.
I mean, that's going to be the question.
No, it's not.
That's going to be the question. Is it going to be enough?
So we'll see. We'll see on Saturday. Hey, 2A's next. How about our 2A? The Wheeling Central Maroon Knights, 41-37 over Monroe Central there at Wheeling Central's gym.
That's a tight game.
Really tight game, and there was a bank-in 3 towards the end, to kind of give Central that lead that Monroe Central couldn't overcome. Vogren led the Maroon Knights with 14. Edge had 13, and Downing chipped in with 12 points. So again, even scoring across the board. And Wheeling Central again likes to shoot from behind the arc. Not to be outdone, Monroe Central 12 points from Bettinger, 10 from Abby Thompson in the paint, and Balmer added 7. Hey, you're looking to get a victory and get a championship there for Wheeling Central. They'll be playing the River Pilots. They got the victory in the other semifinal. They were led by Kelsey Harlan. She had 23, and in the game, she went over 1,000 points for her career.
That's awesome. Congratulations.
Yeah. So she now has 1,002 points for her career, leading the Pilots into the championship game. Rally Knight also had 23 for the Pilots. So that's going to be a great game too. River and the Wheeling Central Maroon Knights.
Sweeping declaration. Go River.
How about next? I don't know, with all these great matchups, Zach, I don't know if it could be the matchup of the weekend, but you're going to have the third matchup between Wheeling Park and Morgantown. Wheeling Park's 2-0 against the Mohegans so far this season. The Patriots are 18-1. They beat Warren Local 77-56 to get there to Harrison Central for the championship game.
Let me guess. You're about to say Alexis Bordish. You're about to say Lala Woods. We're going to have some Natalie Doherty. We're going to have a lot of scoring sprinkled in there.
I'm going to add somebody for you.
Oh, okay.
I'm going to add somebody in. We are going to talk about Alexis, and we're going to talk about Lala, and we're going to talk about Sophie Abraham. How about Seneca Heller?
Okay.
7 rebounds, 5 offensive rebounds, 4 steals, and 3 assists for a freshman.
That's awesome.
In a 5A game in the semifinals of the OVAC. And if you know her, to grab 7 rebounds for her, that's one of those cases where you have to know where the basketball is. Now, she's tenacious, so she's going to fight you. I don't care if she could be playing a 7-footer down there, and she's going to fight you for the rebounds. But, I see that stat line, and I'm like, I've talked about her before, a player that will do what it takes to win games. When you have a girl that plays, she's a point guard or maybe a shooting guard, depending on what she plays, to get 7 rebounds, very unselfish to be down there fighting with the trees.
Yeah, for real.
Yeah. But of course, Alexis Bordas, 17 over 26, came in the third quarter. She had 8 rebounds. Lala Woods, 4 assists, 4 steals, 21 points. Sophie Abraham, 14 points. Natalie Doherty, 9, 4 assists, 3 rebounds. Merritt Delk had 4 rebounds and 3 assists. So, just all across the board when you're getting 4, 5, 6 rebounds here, 3, 4, 5 assists here, 10 points, 11 points, 14 points, you're going to win basketball games.
Yep. Yeah,
definitely. But hey, how about Warren Local comes into the game? They kept it pretty close for a while. They played a really good game. Alex Frazee went over 1,000 points for her career. So we had a couple ladies go over 1,000 points.
Anytime
for
you
career.
See 1,000, it's impressive.
Yeah, definitely. She had 28 in the game. Just couldn't. Just so tough to stop Park. On the defensive side, and then on the other side of the bracket, Morgantown beat Marietta 54-19. Big victory for the Mohegans.
Setting up another matchup.
Setting up the third matchup of the year. They play 3 or 4 times a year. Every year they play 2 in the regular season. They play in the OVACs. They play in the sectional regional tournament. And heck, sometimes they could play in the state tournament. You're talking about playing a team 5 times in a season.
That's crazy.
So they know each other. There's no surprises, Zach, in that one.
None.
But going to be a great game. Go out to Harrison Central. Watch them all. I don't know which game. If you're going to pick one, I think that's a losing battle just to pick one. I think you got to pick more than one game to go see. That 5A matchup, it's going to be a great one.
It's going to be a lot of fun.
Definitely.
So I went and pulled up the West Virginia coaches poll. Came out for both boys and girls basketball. I went and picked those up. They came out yesterday. Figured we could take a quick look at those here.
Yeah.
Figured it'd be a nice little jumping point there. We have the West Virginia boys basketball poll, or do we want to do girls since we were just talking girls?
We can do either one. Let's do girls first.
Let's do girls.
We're on the girls' side. We're just talking about the girls. And state tournaments coming up. They don't use these rankings. That you go for your section, your region, but everybody likes to look at rankings, see where we stand, and then when you get to that state tournament, you can always say, hey, this team was number 1 for a reason, so the writers can kind of pat themselves on the back. Or the fans who said, hey, we were shorted all season, they can say, we were right. We knew how good our basketball team was. So if you look at the top of the standings, as we talked about them, Wheeling Park, 17-1, 8 first-place votes. They're the number 1 team in Quad A in West Virginia.
It's hard to argue against what they've done all year.
Definitely.
It really is.
But hey, don't have to go too far to find that opponent in the OVAC championship this week. You got to go down to 3 to find Morgantown. They're 13-4. 2 of those losses are to Park. So, they're 13-2 outside of Wheeling Park. So, again, it's going to be a great matchup this weekend. Go a little further in the standings. You see University at 7. They're 10-7. But that little 1 in the loss column for Wheeling Park?
Yep.
That was University. So you have there's 7.
That's a feather in University's cap.
Oh, definitely, definitely, yeah. And they use that for motivation. A little further down the standings, number 9, Parkersburg South. They come in at 8-6. Great program down there in Parkersburg for the South Patriots. Some other teams look at John Marshall received some votes. So nothing to turn your hat on there with John Marshall going into the sectionals. They're playing really well right now. Yeah. In the AAA side, not a lot of schools in the area. I don't think that are that size. No. I'd say East Fairmont, though. We like the Fairmont area. Pepperoni rolls, Fairmont. East Fairmont comes in at number 4 at 15-2. Something to look at here. Wayne, 16-0, undefeated, all 9 first-place votes. So that's something to look forward to, looking towards that state tournament. Moving down into the AA rankings, we have some teams here, Zach. We've talked about them a couple times. The Wheeling Central Maroon Knights come in at 5. At 13-3,
tied with Williamstown at 13-3 as well.
Yeah, but both with 13-3 records. That's a great matchup in football or basketball, whatever you're doing. Wheeling Central and Williamstown always seem to be right there with each other. Right below Wheeling Central's Parkersburg Catholic at 9-5. St. Mary's just below that at 7, 11-6. And some great games are going to be had in the section, regional, and state tournament in that AA class. Yep. Definitely. Class A. Who's the class of Class A?
Dragons.
The Cameron Dragons.
Yep.
Now, they're 13-5, but Lindsley, Morgantown, Parkersburg South. That's a tough schedule. But the writers know this.
Right.
They come in with 6 first-place votes. They're number 1 for a reason.
They absolutely are number 1 for a reason. And, it's clear to see why. We've talked about their strength of schedule is one of the biggest talking points we've had about the Cameron Dragons all year.
Yeah. Hey, going to number 2, Doddridge.
Yep.
They pick up a first-place vote. They're 14-3. They came up in the standings a little bit from last week. They'll be a tough out in the tournament. Next at number 3 is Tucker County. And I know we don't talk about Tucker County too much, but they're 11-2. They have 2 first-place votes and great basketball program down there. I can remember being at John Marshall. We traveled down to Tucker to play them. And, put up a great game. You got to figure at that time it was a triple-A versus a single-A team. And great program going down there. They have some really good basketball. They're going to be a tough out. So good luck to them as well in a very tight single-A field. 100 picked up a couple votes there in the poll. I know they took one on the chin to Cameron and that OVAC, but not too many teams can keep up with Cameron at this point. Single-A. Moving on to the boys' side. A team that we talk about, Morgantown.
Right.
10 first place votes. They're 14-1. No losses in state. That was an out of state loss. They're number one. I think they've been number one since the beginning of the season. I think they'll finish the season number one in the polls.
I think they were your preseason pick to win the state championship in that bracket, right?
But once the tournament starts in the section, the region, records are out the window. Right. So it doesn't matter if you're 14-1, 15-1, 21-1. Your record's done, and everybody's in the playoffs.
I was gonna say, I know we've talked about them a lot. I know you were a strong believer in how tough they are.
They're good.
And they're gonna be a tough really basketball team to knock out. But then sitting at 2, have Parkersburg South.
Yeah, the Patriots, a great program again. Just all those kids, it seems like they're all 6'2", 6'3", with like 8-foot wingspans. Play great defense down there at Parkersburg.
A lot of those tough kids that we talked about in football are playing basketball too. So you can see why that translation happens there a little bit too.
Definitely. And as we go down the rankings a little bit, we have local Wheeling Park at number 9. They're 10-4. Coming together on the season. We talked about them a little bit earlier in the show. Aiden Davis, pumping in 13 points, shooting the threes. But Park's got a really good roster. I think they can make a little bit of a run.
Oh, they absolutely can make a bit of a run. And when you see I've seen Wheeling Park's basketball team, not this year, but I've seen them play in the past. I know a lot of those kids on that team. Yeah. They have some great athletes on that team. And when they're at 9, I think that just really speaks to the strength of the Quad A field in West Virginia. Yeah,
it's a really strong field. It's going to be a great tournament this year. I can't wait being down there. Moving to AAA, again, in AAA, just schools around here just don't fall into that AAA category. But if we took a look, Fairmont Senior, they're always in contention for a state title. They're number 2 first place votes. They're 12-1. They were 1 last week. They dropped down in the rankings a little bit. East Fairmont comes in at 4. They're 13-1. Just a couple local teams, and then Weir. Yeah. They're right outside of that top 10. So I think this is going to be a good section and region to watch again in AAA, the AAA field. But that Fairmont Senior team, they'll be playing a couple rounds, I think, down in the state tournament. Hey, getting to the AA field. Williamstown, I know not local, but anytime a team's 15-0, you got to mention them, right?
Yeah, you almost have to.
So they're number 1 in the AA field, 8 first place votes. Bluefield picks up a couple first place votes. Really good basketball down there. Chapmanville always plays well. But for some local teams, we have St. Mary's coming in at 8 at 9-4. Wheeling Central at 9th at 9-7. Yep. And Wheeling Central's playing pretty good basketball right now. So I think, again, the section's going to be great.
We talked about how they're young still, too. So, anything that they can be in that top 10 and just keep battling, you'll probably see them change that seating a little bit more next year, I think. Yeah. I don't think this is their year. I could be wrong. It's basketball. I've practically proved that I'm wrong with basketball all season.
So they bounce between Wheeling Central chose to play up in 3A, and then their classification should have been a 2. So they went back down to their 2, and then when they redo the rankings again, we'll see what they decide to do. Right. But they wanted a little extra competition in that triple, and now they drop back down into the original classification of the 2A. Now, you remember who the number 1 team was in that AA, Williamstown. Mm-hmm. Now you go to Class A, and it's James Monroe, who played for a state title in football this year. So
they got all 10 of the first place
10
votes.
First place votes. They, state title last year. James Monroe's they're rolling there in that single A. They're 14-2. They were number 1 last week. But again, some local teams. Hey, there's Cameron sitting at 5. So the boys and girls, well represented in the polls. 9-6 record, but Cameron can make some noise in the tournament. Definitely.
I find it interesting that there's a tie for 7th place between the Seabees and Doddridge County. That's interesting.
Clay Battelle and Doddridge, both, I would say in our area, both teams, we follow both teams, we talk about both teams. A 7th place tie right there. Again, a great field for basketball there in single A. 100. There we got 100 picking up a couple votes, and we're at Madonna picking up a couple votes. So it's going to be a great tournament to watch here coming up in the next couple weeks.
It's going to be a lot of fun. Yeah. Well, I think we're running a little bit long here. I think it might be time for us to settle down here. But before we, do that, we'd like to thank our sponsors, all of our sponsors, Ohio Valley Nutrition, Swan Sports Shop, Lori Grizel, See For Yourself. It's awesome that they're on our team. I said it a little bit at the beginning, but it's fantastic they're on our team. They're willing to help us promote local athletes and promote the Valley. And like Tom and I talked about, like when I talked robotics, about how big the community is in this. And I had a conversation with a parent at the robotics tournament that he didn't even know OV athletics was a thing till he saw the robotics article pounced around on Facebook. And he's like, there is so much good stuff on there. He's like, he said he spent an entire afternoon reading a bunch of our content. So be sure to, word of mouth is a huge thing here. I know the STREAMcast hasn't really taken off to the popularity, but it's going to come. I've got that feeling. Be sure to spread us around. Tell people about us. You know, like, subscribe, comment, tell your friends about us.
Definitely. I got a text this morning about our archery content. They're like, thank you so much for covering the archery. It's just not promoted that much. And I said, we're looking to cover everything. You know, if there's something that we're not covering, hey, send us a message here. Send us a message on Facebook. You know, get a hold of us and say, hey, why don't you do this? Why don't you come to this? And we'll be there. We love being at the events. We love checking out the local athletes and just being there and promoting the kids. Thanks again.
It's awesome. Yeah. Thanks, guys. We'll see you soon. Probably next week.